November 1994. David sat nervously in the waiting room as his wife, Ellie, went through labor. Ellie had always wanted to have a child, and now, as she was about to give birth to their little girl, David couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. He was excited to meet his daughter, but also scared of what the future will bring for her. Even though he would still love her regardless, there is still the fact it's going to happen eventually. As the hours passed, David paced back and forth, checking his watch every few minutes. Finally, the nurse came out to tell him that Ellie was ready to deliver. David rushed into the delivery room and took Ellie's hand, offering words of encouragement as she pushed. After a few tense moments, Ellie gave birth to a beautiful little girl. The couple looked at each other in amazement as they held their new daughter in their arms. They decided to name her Elizabeth Reeve, as was her family's tradition of a name, starting with L. David had picked one he liked starting with it to go with what they both liked. David couldn't believe how perfect she was. She had a head full of brown hair and big blue eyes. For a second he saw her eyes twinkle and thought he was seeing things. He knew that Ellie would be an amazing mother, and he was excited to be a dad. As they held Elizabeth, they talked about how wonderful it would be to have their family. They talked about all the joys that having a baby would bring to them. They promised to always love and protect her. As the days passed, David and Ellie settled into their new roles as parents. They were tired but happy. They knew that raising Elizabeth would be a challenging and rewarding journey, but they were ready for it. David looked forward to watching his daughter grow up and seeing the person she would become. He knew that she would bring them joy, laughter, and most importantly, love. Still, the thought of the day it would come terrified him to the core. Ellie knew he felt dread and tried to tell him that she would teach her about it when the time come, promising to guide and help her through it all when it happens. As the time passed, Elizabeth blossomed into a lively and talkative child at 5 years old. She had inherited her mother's striking appearance, with long brown hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. Her father's influence was also evident in her energetic and outgoing personality. Her father was incredibly fond of her and cherished every moment spent with her. Elizabeth was quite a handful, even at her young age, always on the move and eager to explore the world around her. Her boundless curiosity and wonder made her a typical little girl, and her parents treasured every moment they spent with her, watching her grow and learn. They were grateful for the gift of their daughter and the joy she brought to their lives. David shouts Elizabeth's name as he looks for her in the backyard. He spots her playing alone near the swing set and calls out to her again, this time louder. I turn my head towards the sound of my name and see Dad approaching me. I smile and run towards him, excited to see him. Dad and Mom stand in the doorway of the backyard smiling. Elizabeth, it's time to go. We're leaving for Colorado on a trip to see your cousin Natasha for your birthday, he says. My face lights up with excitement as I hear the news and I run over to Dad, grabbing his arm. Let's go, Daddy, I exclaim as we walk back inside the house. Everything was already packed while I was playing outside, so we quickly gathered the suitcases and started loading them into the car. I was practically bouncing with excitement as I love my family from my father's side, and I'm particularly close with my cousin Natasha. We all got into the car and buckled up for the long trip to Colorado. Dad starts the engine and we begin to drive off from our home in Texas. As we hit the road, I looked out the window with wide-eyed wonder, taking in the sights and sounds of the journey. As we travel, I am mesmerized by the passing scenery. Passing through small towns and vast countryside, crossing state lines and seeing the different landscapes along the way. I loved seeing the view of the different locations, pointing out different things to Dad and asking him questions about the places we passed through. From wide open fields to towering mountain ranges, I am entranced by the sights we saw. I'm excited to be on this trip with my dad and mom, and am looking forward to my family in Colorado. After a couple of days on the road, we finally arrived in Colorado, pulling up to a nice brick house with a beautiful appearance, with a well-manicured lawn and a white picket fence. Dad parks the car and we all get out and approach the front door. Dad raises his hand and knocks on the door, and after a moment it opens. a man with parted brown hair and a strong facial structure, which gives him a serious appearance, but despite that greets us with a warm smile. "Welcome," he says, as he opens the door wide to let us in. "I'm so glad you made it. Come in, come in." The three of us step inside. Dad expresses his gratitude. "Thank you, Alex." The man's smile widens as he welcomes them further into his home. Upon entering the home, we are greeted by a blonde-haired woman with blue eyes and a little girl who closely resembles her, hair covering one of her eyes slightly. The girl appeared to be timid, but her demeanor changed upon seeing me. As soon as I spotted her, she ran up to me and the little girl's face lit up with excitement. "Natasha, let's go play!" I exclaimed excitedly. Mom, noticing my enthusiasm, gently reminded me, Elizabeth, "Say hi to your Aunt Mila and Uncle Alex." I obediently walked over to Mila, giving her a hug and a warm greeting before doing the same with Alex. I then eagerly took Natasha's hand, and we went off to play together. The adults watched with fond smiles on their faces. Mila turned to David and commented, "Elizabeth is still quite the energetic one, it seems." "She seems to be so much like you, David," Mila said with a smile and a chuckle. David let out a small laugh and replied, "Yeah, she's a handful." After some time spent playing together, we came bounding back into the room, our laughter and chatter filling the space. Dad and Mom greeted me with hugs, and Mila and Alex welcomed Natasha back with open arms. The group was now complete, and the atmosphere was even more lively and joyful with the return of the two girls. As Mila watched the two young cousins play together, she couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth in her heart. She thought to herself how wonderful it was to see Natasha so full of energy, despite her shy and timid nature. She had always been a bit reserved, but in the presence of her cousin Elizabeth, she seemed to come out of her shell and truly shine. The birthday party was a memorable event that I will always cherish. It was a day filled with joy and laughter as my family and friends gathered to celebrate with me. I was surprised to see that even Edward and Maria had made it with their baby Felix. He was just 2 years old, but he was already a charmer and had inherited the best qualities of his parents. I was delighted to see them and grateful that they had taken the time to join us. We had a delicious chocolate cake that was beautifully decorated with candles, and everyone, it was a simple but heartfelt moment, and I felt loved and appreciated. My family also gave me thoughtful gifts that I will always remember. They were not extravagant, but they were perfect for me, and I appreciated the thought and effort that had gone into choosing them. However, the party could not last forever, and I was saddened when it was time to leave. I even pouted a little bit, but my dad reassured me that we would come back one day. He said that we might even move there permanently, and that possibility filled me with excitement and hope.